Okay, so next we're going to write a basic test for our application. So to do that, we're going to do PHP artisan make test post test. Okay, so if we go to our feature test, which is the default, we will see that we have our post. So this already makes some kind of assertion saying that let me get this route and assert status is 200. Okay. What we want to do first of all is we need to test that when you go to a route full of blog posts that you see the posts, right? So let's, first of all, we need to fill our database with posts before we do that. So to tell this test case that we need to do that, we're going to use something called use refresh database, okay? And what that's going to do is it's going to tell this post before you run each one of these tests, we want to tear down the database and spin it back up with a fresh, empty database, okay? And to do that with, we want to fill this database with some stuff to run these tests on. So let's just do this seed, okay? And what this does is it runs the database seeder just as we declared before. Like it runs all this stuff here. And it just tells it to run that stuff, fill our database with that stuff before we do our tests, okay? So in testing, there's basically three phases. There's the setup, there is the action, and then there's the assertion. So right now, this is the setup, creating the conditions. The action would be getting some URL, and then the assertion would be saying, okay, after I've done this setup and this action, I want to make an assertion that X, Y, Z is true, okay? So let's go ahead and create another post. Let's just say we have to give it a category. So actually, let's just grab a random post. So post equals post random, I think, all random first. I think there's probably an easier way to do that, but let's go to posts, and then we want to assert. Now there's assertions. There's a whole list of assertions you can see, but let's say we want to assert C, and then we want to make sure that the post title is there. So post title, okay, and then let's name this can see post title on index. Probably a better name for that, but that's fine. So there's one more stage to this, and before we do this, it's going to default to our SQL connection, to our MySQL connection. I don't really want to wipe that database every time, my local. So what I'll do is I'll go down to this file called phpunit.xml, okay? And this file dictates how the application behaves when you're running tests, okay? And this is telling it, hey, when you're running tests, like for instance, here's the driver for the key connection. Here's like, basically it swaps out all these underlying implementations in a testing environment only when you're running tests. Okay, so that the application, you don't have to do a bunch of like if testing checks inside your app. Okay, the database is going to be SQLite, the database connection. That's going to be SQLite in your memory. And it's telling it that we want an in-memory database when we're running this, okay? And what this does is allows us to run it in like CI containers and Git flows and all that kind of stuff. So this is an important step here. Okay, so let's go ahead and run our test. We can do it a couple of ways. PHP artisan test is one of them. Oh, that's right. It's giving us a failing test, which is good. So this is what a failing test. Hey, look, our test passed. That's pretty cool. That other route doesn't exist anymore. So we can delete this test. When a test fails, remember kids, always just delete it. That's the moral of the story. All right, so let's go ahead and run it again just to see that green check. Yeah, all right. So this is telling us that when it creates, when it runs this test, it will go to this, and it is in fact seeing that the title is there, which is pretty cool. Okay. So now let's take one step further here, and let's make another one just for the single page. Can see post title on single. And let's do a route parameter this time. Let's do route. Remember our helper here? Route, and then we're going to call it post.show, I think is what it's called. And then post. That's what we're going to pass to the route. And then we want to make sure that we see the assert title. Let's make an assertion that we see the post category name too. Response assert see post category title, I think is what we call it too. Just kidding. There we go. Okay, so we want to seed it again. And notice that we're setting up the database each time because these are going to run in isolation. We're going to get a random post, show it here, yada, yada, yada. Yep, looks good. All right, let's try it. Yep, and it passes. And that means that we are able to see the category title on that single page, which is pretty cool. So that's it. That's testing. You don't need to know anything else. No, this is just the tip of the iceberg. But I wanted to show you sort of the anatomy of how to set up a test. The setup, the action, and the assertion, and how to do that with seeded data that we created.